Good evening and welcome. You're watching Newsbreak with me, Sanket Upadhyay. The big story that we've been tracking all day is the survey that was conducted at the offices of the British Broadcasting Corporation in the national capital. Now, an explanation has come from government sources, but the point is, weeks after a BBC docuseries, which was very critical of the position of the Prime Minister, these taxmen have come knocking. And thus, this creates a sense of doubt in the minds of a lot of people who are now saying that will we set these agencies after anyone who criticizes the government, whether within this country or outside. So a lot of these huge political debate which is going on in India. But what really was the reason why this survey happened? Now we must also understand that there is a difference between a survey and a search and seizure. A survey essentially means that the income tax officials come uninvited and they carry out this sort of an assessment. They check the documents randomly, but they do not seize any document. They just would basically say that let these documents be. Don't destroy them. Let them be. And then this is considered the first step towards a subsequent operation, which is then called a search and seizure operation, which in common parlance is also called a raid. So that raid has not happened. We are being told a survey has happened today. Now, it is believed that the phones which were seized of the employees, because when any survey is carried out, people should not be seen talking. So that is why their phones are seized. Those phones have now been returned. The authorities are calling this a routine survey. But something very interesting as to why this is being carried out, that information by way of sources has been provided. So let's put that on screen right now. The tax department says that the income authorities conducted a survey on the BBC premises in Delhi in view of BBC's deliberate non-compliance with transfer pricing rules and its vast diversion of profits. It has not been specified as to what exact violation has the BBC committed and what exactly is the transfer pricing rules that have been violated. They say that it is pertinent to note that the above exercise conducted by tax authorities is called survey and not search raid. They say in the case of the BBC, there has been persistent non-compliance with the above mentioned rules so far on 3 counts. 1, non-compliant under transfer pricing rules. Number 2, persistent and deliberately violative of transfer pricing norms. And number 3, deliberately diverted significant amounts of profits and have not followed the arm's length arrangement in the case of allocation of profit. Now, of course, these are allegations by the income tax department. What have they actually found in their survey? And what will be their next step? And what action can BBC take under the Indian law, because all of this is happening in India, on Indian soil, still remains to be seen. But this has kicked off a political row, lots of political reactions now coming in. Let's quickly play them out.
कोई भी एजेंसी हो, मीडिया से जुड़ी हो, कंपनी हो, अगर भारत में वो काम कर रही है तो उसको भारत के कानून को मानना होगा, उसका पालन करना होगा। अगर कुछ गलत किया नहीं है, कानून का पालन किया है, तो फिर डर कैसा, फिर चिंता कैसी? आयकर विभाग को अपना काम करने दिया जाना चाहिए और दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी हो जाना चाहिए।
मैं समझता हूं ये अफसोस की बात है, क्योंकि ये एक वो मीडिया है जिसने कि सारी दुनिया को कवर करता है और करीबन सच्ची खबरें हर जगह देता है, जो कई मुल्कों को अच्छा नहीं लगता है। और जो इन पे आज ये हुआ है, ये हमको लगता है कि देखिए, पहले ही जमहूरियत पे यहाँ ख़तरा है। आप देखते हैं कि मीडिया कितना ही सप्रेस्ड है और उसकी एक कड़ी ये भी है। और मुझे लगता है कि ये होना नहीं चाहिए था इस वक्त, क्योंकि ये बीबीसी की जो 2 डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज आई थी, उसका लोग यही समझेंगे कि उसी का असर है।
So is there actual merit in this raid, and we should wait for the process to be complete, or is this, as many are calling, a simple 2+2, that there was a docu-series a few weeks back and here comes the raid? I have with me Mr. Vikas Singh, Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court. Aarti Jairat is a Senior Journalist, and Ratan Sharda, author of RSS 360, Sangh and Swaraj. Thank you very much. Mr. Vikas Singh, I want to begin with you first and ask you what exactly, because this is very technical language and one does not understand what exactly has been violated by the British Broadcasting Corporation. So when the government says, the agency says that non-compliant under transfer pricing rules, persistent and deliberately violative of transfer pricing norms, and deliberately diverting significant amounts of profits and have not followed arm's length arrangement in the case of allocation of profit, what does this mean?
So basically, when you say that there is a violation of transfer pricing norms or there is no arm's length, then obviously you are sending money to your sister concern and showing it to be an expenditure, which can't be said to be, an expenditure in the usual course of business. So you are claiming that as a set-off, or you are claiming, so there has to be something of that kind which has happened in this case. But Sanket, my issue is a little different. I mean, if it's a simpliciter, routine investigation, then we are, unnecessarily making, too much of an issue out of it. But if it is linked to whatever BBC has done in the recent past, then it is a little disturbing, because I feel that a free press is something which is integral to any democracy. A free judiciary, a free press, and civil rights. These are the three things which are most integral for any sort of vibrant democracy. And if there is an attempt to, control the free press or ensure that a press which is considered to be independent is to be, so if supposing if this kind of a thing had been done on all the media houses, I could have understood that. Or if there is something specific again in their case which is being looked at again, that is also something which is justified. But the timing is something which people are raising, eyebrows about, that why this timing immediately after the ban on that documentary, and then that ban happening first and this happening immediately thereafter. But nevertheless, it's too early for comment, because I don't know, maybe there is something deeper, sort of evasion of tax which has been going on for long, maybe, and we don't know. I mean, that only time will unfold. As of now, I'm glad you clarified that this is not a raid, it's just a survey. But up till now, we were all under the impression that there is an income tax raid going on. So if there is a survey, and if it is part of an exercise which started much earlier, much prior to the documentary, and if it has some, evasion of tax involvement issue in that survey, I don't see any wrong in that.
Aarti Jairat, I want to bring you in here.
But if it is not, then definitely we have to be worried.
This point that Mr. Singh just raised, timing.
Thank you, Sangeet.
A lot is being spoken about as far as... Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. This point, Aarti Jairat, that Vikas Singh was talking about, where he said timing is suspect. It all comes down to this. So, should one dehyphenate the timing of the docu-series and, this action by the income tax? Or is there an obvious correlation vis-a-vis timing?
See, Sanket, the timing definitely raises questions. And this is not the first, this is, of course, I think the first foreign media house to be raided by, an agency of the government. The last time a foreign journalist wrote something critical about the Indian Prime Minister was during the Vajpayee regime. But I think that was handled by the INB ministry, which of course, sort of handles the media, and by the MEA. And I don't think any agency was brought into the issue. So this is the first time that a foreign media house has been, surveyed, or income tax officials have gone to a foreign media house. And certainly the timing does raise questions, because we have seen this happen in the past with Indian media houses. Over, the last few years, media houses that have written critical reports about the government, shortly after those reports have appeared, they have also had a visit from the taxman. And then we don't know what has happened after that, whether any notices were served, any action was taken, whether, the taxmen found anything in those surveys that they conducted. So we have no idea because the whole thing seems to have gone tunda. And now again, we have a media house which has, come out with something critical of the government. And within a few weeks, the taxmen have gone knocking. Whether this is something that has been going on from before or not,
Right.
we have no idea. Suddenly today we are told that this has been going on for a long time, that they have been evading, these tax things for a long time. Well, if that was the case, then should the government not have taken action a long
Earlier.
time ago? Why did they, let it?
Yeah, so
fester,
then
fester?
obviously the question of the timing comes in, because
Exactly. And I
if
think
this is
that we-
repeated evasion, then why no action earlier? That's an important point which is being made. Ratan Sharda, I want to bring you in here. You see, by Mr. Gaurav Bhatia's own admission, when he held that press conference, he spoke a lot about the alleged bias of BBC, called it brushed corporation, brushed and bakwas corporation. He gave it a new word. My point, Mr. Sharda, is this not, by the BJP leader's own admission, a clear case of you being upset with a documentary and then commenting on a raid? And thus the correlation. Actually, his press conference left no room for doubt.
Sanket, I would actually call it miscommunication by the BJP PR cell, because you conduct a raid through income tax and claim that they have been repeatedly violating the law, and that should be the base. Why should we bring in bias and all that we are talking of breaking of the law? As far as breaking of any law is concerned, the government is totally in its right to seek a survey, to go to any agency, whether local or foreign. This way of letting foreign agencies go scot-free is started from Twitter. Twitter, we had so many issues. They were summoned by the parliament. They never turned up in parliament. Government sent a summon. Nobody came back. So government got quiet. And today, if the BBC is being under survey, I think that's fine. Why should we?
No, anyone who's doing anything wrong, that's a stated position. If somebody has done something wrong.
Exactly.
But Mr. Sharda, you see, the point is,
suspect.
if this is witch hunting, if this is a witch hunt, then at a time when India is going big on G20 narrative setting, do you think that this is a pleasant thing to do? Especially when we are aiming big on the international
whether it's witch
scale.
hunt or not will be proven by the time. What is the result of the survey? Only then we can say. Right now, to keep on making statements, we are playing into BBC's hands and all overseas media house.
No, not playing.
When FCRA survey was done and thousands
Yeah,
of accounts
so
of closed,
I'm
people
not
say-
playing.
people
See,
say
the thing
it's
is,
vendetta.
Mr.
It turned out it's not a vendetta.
Mr.
No,
Sharda, you just
what I'm
heard.
saying, that when FCRA was imposed strictly, thousands of NGOs were shut down. People called it vendetta. How is it vendetta?
Aarti
we
Jairaj
always-
just mentioned. Aarti Jairaj just mentioned that if they were doing it for a long time, then action could have been taken earlier. It's
Yes,
just that this
something can be
happens
done
in
always
quick
earlier.
succession of that documentary.
Not quick enough. That would be fine. It was done within days. The government could have done within days. It has taken weeks to do this. I think we should not do too much, because for these kind of income tax or tax related or violation of law related cases are concerned, they can be taken up anytime. This timing is always suspect. Whatever BJP does, timing is always questioned. Whether it's election time, whether it's some other time, whether it's a legal issue, whether it's a bill in the parliament, everything is suspect. That's the job of the opposition. No issue at all if they call it timing an issue.
Okay.
For me, timing is not an issue at
Okay.
all. For me, whether something comes out is very important.
I have
not
run
the
out of
claims
time
of
in
the
this
press
segment.
conference.
But Vikas Singh,
Thank
Aarti Jairaj and Ratan Sharda, thank you very much. We are also learning in the meanwhile that the British Broadcasting Corporation, which broadcasts from their India office, is going to continue to do so this evening as well. They have a broadcast in the evening, so that broadcast is going to continue now that the survey is over. We're stopping for a short break, but our focus on this story continues after a short break. All right, joining us right now is Mr. Siddharth Luthra, is the senior advocate of the Supreme Court, also the former additional Solicitor General. Thank you very much, Mr. Luthra, for joining us. For the common man, if you could help us understand, I'll tell you what the statement reads out. What does this actually mean, Mr. Luthra? if we could use your expertise right now. This statement says that this survey is being carried out because of non-compliance under transfer pricing rules, persistent and deliberately violative of transfer pricing norms, and deliberately diverting significant amounts of profits by not following the arm's length arrangement in the case of allocation of profit. Mr. Luthra, what does this mean?
Unfortunately, I'm not privy to how the BBC business is structured here, but I understand that it's a survey. Now, a survey can be done if the government or the income tax authorities, which are designated for this purpose, believe that there is an evasion of tax. That is the purpose behind doing such a survey. And that is the purpose behind permitting such a survey, and that's what it does. So the whole basis of a survey is the authorities come into the office, they come into an office, and they must come into an office, not into a residence, and they will examine the books of account, try and see what is available, and then give certain instructions and then leave. They don't necessarily seize articles. There is a distinction in law between a survey and a raid, and that's absolutely right. And that is the point. And it's a kind of, it's a visit with, of course, the necessary support of the officers of the income tax, who will then go, and if a person obstructs that visit, then action can be taken against the individual concerned. This is, there are some press briefings saying that their phones have been taken away, etc. It is possible, as it happens often, that phones, etc., communications are not allowed to be used. Outside communication is stopped during the period of the survey, but it is not a seizure because that's a separate provision. And of course, if articles are being seized as contended, then it is no longer just a mere survey, but it is a search and seizure operation, which is a distinct power exercised by the income tax authorities.
Could you help us understand the difference between these? So search and seizure, which may also be known as a raid, and on the other hand, a survey exercise, which the statement very clearly says that this is. In a survey, I'm assuming that this would be just a preliminary exercise to check the books of accounts. Beyond
Absolutely.
that, they cannot seize anything. But what do they do with this survey exercise?
So what is done in a survey is that the documents and the records are seen. It's a surprise visit to see documents and records and to make a noting which is in contemplation of further action which may take place subsequently. At this point, they do not seize articles. However, they can instruct the authorities not to remove the articles from the premises, and that the articles concerned are to be retained in the form that they were as on the date of the survey. So that's the whole purpose of the survey. It is a step lower than search and seizure because the standard of search and seizure is much graver. Here, there is only an attempt to find out whether at all there has been an evasion of tax, whereas in a search and seizure, there is information which the authorities ought to have in their hand, by which they have a belief that there is a breach of the income tax law, there is a breach of evasion of tax or other breaches under the income tax law. And for that purpose, the officers go and search and seize certain articles, including money which may have been evaded, or books of account, or records, or other material which is available with the persons concerned who are under search or seizure or raid, as we may call it in colloquial terms.
Mr. Luthra, would you be able to comment on what exactly is meant by diverting amounts of profits and not keeping an arm's length in the case of allocation of profit? Because, you know, this becomes a little complicated as BBC is not an Indian entity. This is an international organization.
So I don't know really the structure that BBC has set up in India, but I would assume that BBC has an office which is operating separately, and therefore I'm a little surprised on how they've talked about non-compliance of transfer pricing, because it's possibly an issue of payments made overseas, and I'm frankly at a bit of a loss to understand how they apply transfer pricing, because it's without the relevant facts. And I'm a little, I would say we will need to know more once things open up, but right now it's too early to say.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we were wondering this too. So, you would basically say, in your wisdom, that more analysis is required on what exactly is wrong over here. Could this potentially be a case where the Indian arm of this international organization is transferring its profits maybe to a different entity or abroad? I mean, these are issues on which we do not have clarity, Mr. Luthra.
We have absolutely limited clarity. All we know is that, as you said earlier, there's a survey on. The purpose of the survey is also, as you indicated, a little complex, needs a lot more understanding, and I think that understanding will develop over a period of time.
My final question, Mr. Luthra, what are the legal options available for an entity like the BBC in India?
Well, the primary option, the option is to go to court and say the survey is unwarranted and unaccounted for, and if there has been excess of power used during the survey, then the action of the officers can be questioned on that. But by and large, normally surveys are not always challenged because there are precursor to a search or seizure. So I think this is something which is the situation is very fluid at this stage, and as more facts emerge, we'll have a better position as to what the reality is and what remedies ought to be exercised in this circumstance.
All right. Mr. Siddharth Luthra, many thanks for joining us with your views. Thank you so much.